Hi, I'm Jerry Alphin. I'm the Alumni Director at Utah Valley University. I'm here with Dana Layton, who is running for House Representative of District 60. Dana, tell us what experience qualifies you for this position.
Well, I have more than 30 years of business experience, most of it running my own company with my husband, and I've been an employer and an employee. I've been a renter and a landlord. I have been a mother, a stay-at-home mother and a working mother. I just feel like I have a perspective that can offer breadth to the analysis of issues and problems up in the state. I went back and got my master's degree. I have a bachelor's in design, and I went back and got my master's in business when my kids were little and in school. I'm the mother of 5 children, and I'm just at that perfect time in my life where my youngest just graduated from high school last week, and I don't have any married kids, so I don't have any grandchildren, and I just have chosen this time in my life to do some public service and see if I can make a difference.
Excellent. Take another minute and tell us what the top priorities for your office will be in the coming 2 years.
Well, you know, it's interesting that is a question, obviously, that a lot of people ask, because apparently a lot of people go to the legislature to try to get something specific done. And I really feel that issues come and go, but good judgment and good analysis is forever. Well, so is bad judgment and bad analysis, but I really want to go up and see if I can make a difference in the process of how bills are passed, pushed through, determined, that I can offer different insights into how things are done and how questions are asked to make sure the right questions are being asked. Because I've had people tell me that, you know what, the scariest 45 days of my life are when the legislature's in session, because I never know what they're going to come up with and what they're going to have to abide by. They pass 300 to 500 new laws every session. Over a 10-year period, that's 5,000 laws we all have to comply with. So I would like to see fewer laws, not more. So I don't have a folder of legislation or bills that I want to go up there and pass right now.
So one of the questions asked of the other opponents has been, what specific legislation would you sponsor, and what would be your focus and why? Even though you mentioned you don't have anything in particular, is there something that kind of interests you more than others? And if so, explain it in a couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, I have found that as rare as it seems to be these days, I really want to be a representative of this district. And so as issues come up, as I went around during the convention time talking to delegates, one of the issues that came up repeatedly was funding for UVU. And being that UVU's in this district, the more I heard the story and analyzed the numbers and talked with Matt Holland, the more I realized there's a compelling story here of inequitable funding, with UVU being the lowest funded higher education institution in the state. And I was really alarmed that it could be that way. And so that has kind of become my new crusade or thing that I want to do, but that's the way I expect to find my legislative priorities, is by talking to constituents, to talking to people in Orem and finding out what are the concerns. And as we balance problem solving with good judgment, you know, you have to have restraint in spending and in legislation in general, and you have to solve problems as well. And sometimes I think we rush to solve problems without really putting it up to a template and saying, does this fit within the framework of the Constitution and within the proper role of conservative government, limited government, smaller government? And so legislatively, I think my priority is to make sure that everything that the legislature passes fits within those parameters, that we protect individual rights and freedoms and solve problems in ways that are consistent with the Founding Fathers' intent.
Take a few minutes and review your position on immigration, budget, education, healthcare, public land use policy, in order of their priority to you.
Okay. We'll try, and if I forget one, you tell me
I'll list those
which
again,
one I forget.
yes.
Well, immigration, I think the couple of things that are paramount with immigration that everyone is concerned about is the cost of having illegal immigrants in our state, the cost of educating, and the healthcare costs, everything that it demands on the state, as well as the incidence of crime. And I think in any way that we address immigration, it's a tough problem because it's a federal problem. I believe the state has the right to figure out who is in our state, but I think that federally, there's got to be a lot more pressure for the federal government to protect the borders, and I just think it's unconscionable that in the post 9/11 era that we don't know who's in our country. And so, but I do agree with the Utah, sorry, I just brought the word, the compact, where I think it needs to be done with compassion and with just common sense. We cannot deport 12 million people. And I'm not sure if immigration, if being here as an immigrant illegally is a criminal offense or if it's a civil offense. And I think we need to look at that and be a little bit less emotional about how we respond with immigration. With education, people always ask, that's a great question for Utah, because education obviously is a huge priority, I think, for most people. And people ask me, what's my stand? And I say, I'm for it. I mean, I think any way we can get more educated is a good way to be educated. But I do believe that we have to be careful not to compromise the public education system when that is the form of education that's constitutionally mandated in Utah. And so I think it has to be a budgeting priority. We do have a lot of kids. But what I'd like to see as far as education reforms are things that address getting money down into the classroom more, to the teachers and to the kids. Right now, as I understand it, in Alpine District, about half of all funds are gone before it gets down to that level. And I'd like to see that ratio increase. What were some of the other issues? There's so many.
Yeah, there was healthcare, budget priorities, and public land use or policy.
Yeah, well, I hit public land use first because I think that's so integral to proper funding of education. I don't necessarily think we need to raise taxes to increase to increase funding for education, because I think that in the long run, in the short run, the best answer is to have an economy that is robust. And that's where I feel like my business background and business experience brings a different perspective that is firsthand knowledge of what it takes to be a small business person, and what the incentives and disincentives are.
Thank you, Dana. The next question is, and take a couple minutes to explain what reforms in public policy and higher education you would support, advocate, or sponsor.
I think that's something that I'm open to different opinions on and different suggestions from people who know more about higher education, people who are actually in it, and people who are actually in education. I hear a lot of different positions. In principle, I can tell you that I think local control is better than state control, and state control is better than federal control. So in general, I believe in giving as much control to local educators as possible and parents, and as much choice to them. I think that education is, we have an interesting concept. I listened to a few days ago, to Paul Clement, who fought the Obamacare case before the Supreme Court and argued it. He's the former Solicitor General, and he said something really interesting. Kagan questioned him, Judge Kagan, and said, when is $10 million not, how could the government giving you $10 million not be a gift? Can you think of any instance? And he said, yes. And she was shocked, and apparently it was a big dramatic moment in the courtroom. And she said, would you share it with us? And he said, yes, if the person took it out of my bank account and then said, here's $10 million, I'll give it back to you if you do this, this, and this. And I think that's where the federal government has us over a barrel with education. They take our tax dollars, and then they turn around with No Child Left Behind or Common Core and say, here, you can have the money back if you do it our way. And I think that's coercion, plain and simple.
Explain under what conditions you would support a tax increase or a tax decrease.
I think a tax decrease should happen anytime there's a surplus, I think the government, the legislature, whichever body is taxing, needs to remember that it is not their money. Every dollar of tax money is a dollar that someone else earned and someone else produced. I mean, if you earned it and you produced it and you give it to the government, it's not voluntary. They are taxing you. So if the government doesn't need it or can find a way to save it, it should go back to you. Now, I'm not opposed to a rainy day fund. I think that's just good fiscal management. But in general, I think a tax decrease or some kind of refund or rebate is in order anytime there are huge surpluses. I think in terms of an increase, I think when the general populace supports it and they want it, like in case of the care tax in Orem, I don't know that a government doing an arts program is within the defined limited role of government that we support, like on a federal level. But where the citizens in Orem had that on the ballot and voted it in, then I support it completely, because that's what we as citizens said. We are willing to pay that extra 0.1% so we can have those programs. And when it's voluntary, I think the tax increases are fine.
A statesman leads his or her constituents in the direction they should go. A representative advocates for views and interests of his or her constituents. In actuality, every legislator has to draw a balance between being a statesman and a representative. When issues about which you feel strongly lead you in one direction, and you perceive that your constituents' feelings lead them strongly in the opposite direction, how will you decide your vote and why?
I don't think it's a matter of deciding a vote in one way or the other. I think it's a matter of meeting in the middle and educating. If I feel strongly about an issue that my constituents seem to feel differently about, I would explain why I feel strongly about that issue and what I think the parameters are or the fallout of passing legislation, a certain bill would be. And I would hope that in that dialogue, we would come to an understanding. Now, if I can't convince them and they all, think otherwise, I would tell you, if it's something that steps outside the bounds of individual liberties or the Constitution, I would uphold the Constitution, because that is the oath of that office. And so if the majority of the people don't want something that's constitutional, my first priority is to uphold my oath of office. However, if people want to, if they have an opinion, I'm just open to being educated. A lot of people give a bad name to lobbyists and say, oh, they're just, these special interests all trying to get people and make these backroom deals. But I see lobbying as a very critical component of legislating, because every lobbyist is there to share their spin, their version of the story of how certain legislation affects their industry or them. And if you don't have lobbyists, you don't have people educating you as to all sides. And so I just think education is the most important thing, not only as a legislator for me to be educated on issues, but to turn to people who really know and ask the experts. I had one delegate come up with a great idea. He said, I think when you get elected, you need to have a local community advisory council, that we get together for breakfast once a month and we let you know sort of the pulse of the community and what's happening in different areas. And I appointed him the chair. I said, you can organize that. I think that's a fantastic idea, to have kind of an advisory board, a community advisory board, to actually keep me abreast of what is going on in the community.
Dana, just take a minute and give us your closing statement.
And maybe I'll answer a little bit of, I didn't really address the statesman part of that. I see statesman as more than someone that just propels their own idea or leads people in the direction they should go, because I think that's one of the things that's wrong with government now, is that we have a lot of people who think they know better than we do, who think they know better than the people. And they're parental, and the laws are very parental. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't get bigger than a 32-ounce Coke in New York now? They're so father knows best, mother knows best kind of laws that get passed. And I think there's great wisdom in the people, and that a statesman and a leader, which is what I hope to be up there, is someone who can bring ideas together and help people communicate better. And instead of just bashing issues and saying, I'm for this and I'm against this, where that kind of conflict creates more heat than light. I would like to bring some light into the legislature and some insight so we can all make better laws and make fewer laws.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you for joining us. And please be sure to vote in the primary on June 26th.